Hey friends, thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on another homemade black pot experiment. This time it's with the century plant. Okay, I've cut this down already, but if you want to know what a century plant really is, you can just Google it. It's real simple. Type in what is a century plant and you'll learn a little bit about century plants. I'll tell you what I know about them just very briefly. You know, they only bloom once every 100 years. That's why they call them a century plant. But the thing that caught my curiosity about the century plant decades ago, when I was first learning how to be a buckskinner, living in Arizona, a lot of the buckskinners would say, well, if you get yourself a century plant, cut it down, cut it in half, and you'll see that it's very, very pithy. It's pithy along the lines of mullein, yucca, and I've made gunpowder out of yucca and mullein, and they burn very clean, and I got really good velocities out of it. In fact, right next to my peanut shell, I would say mullein is like equal. I honestly would. But one thing that I am now to the point of testing, because I've never bothered doing this, a lot of the buckskinners back at that time frame said if you take a century cactus, cut it in half, you don't need to char this to catch a spark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that to the test, because I don't believe it. Okay, so what I've done, I've taken the other half of this piece and I've broken it up. I'm going to break it up a little bit more into smaller pieces, and I'm going to take my flint and steel and try it, because I don't believe it. And I'll tell you why I don't believe it just real quick. When I lived in Wisconsin, a lot of the buckskinners up there said, yeah, when you're walking in the woods and you find those funguses that grow on the side of trees, if you break those off, open them up, and you can see like a wood grain in them, you don't need to char it. They'll catch a spark and go. So when I lived in Wisconsin, guess what I did? I found a bunch of it, broke it all up, carried it in my pouch, and when I needed to make a fire, it wouldn't catch a spark. You have to char it, okay? So I'm going to test this. So I'm going to get some more of this punky stuff cleaned out, and then I'll turn the camera, and hopefully we can get a good view of whether this is going to just catch a spark and go. And if it doesn't, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, those old timers probably knew more about this than I did. But what I'm going to do is try it first with regular flint and steel. I don't know if you guys can see the sparks coming off of that. And then if that don't work, I'm going to go with something much more hotter. Ferrocerium rod. Okay? We'll see. So I get this little nest made right here. And I'll try to get the camera turned around so that we can observe where the sparks land, if they're going to catch or not, and what they're going to do. Alright, that's a pretty good close-up, so let's observe. Nothing yet. This spark's falling in it. Let me make an adjustment here. So when I start fires with flint and steel, I like having all my char material on top so that as you're striking the flint, the steel, the sparks fall onto the char material. So as you can see, I have some of that right here, and let's see if I can't get it to catch like this. Nope, nothing. They're just bouncing off. Alright, let's try it with the ferrocerium rod. Well, like a lot of other things in life, there's shit talkers out there. It doesn't work, even with a ferrocerium rod. It doesn't work. It didn't catch. So if you're going to be looking to make a fire, well, in fact, if I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but let me see. Let me get a pointer. Right here, again, I don't know how well the camera can pick it up, but right here you can see where the ferrocerium rod was, the sparks from the ferrocerium rod was so hot, it burnt into the pith. It burnt in right here, and you can see some burn marks right here. But it didn't catch. So, if you're ever out and about, and you need to start a fire with flint and steel, don't use century cactus, because it ain't going to work. You literally need a charred piece of material, something that's going to catch that spark and keep it alive while you're making the fire. But now that I'm going to cut this up, and I am going to take the pieces and I'm going to run them on my sander and kind of clean them up a little bit. You can kind of see that on the outside of the stock there's what appears to be spots of mold or whatever it is. But I'm going to go ahead and clean it all up. You can see there's some dark coloring right here. So I'm going to clean all that up, put it in the char can, and once it gets charred, we'll come back here and see how well it catches a spark at that point. Stay tuned. Well, I'm finding this a little interesting. I've had the can on the fire for about 30 minutes and there's hardly any smoke coming out of this at all. So what I thought I would do was take the blowtorch, propane torch, and burn the bottom of it. I've got a clean side, and I was really surprised how it reacted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it once again and let everybody see, and make up your own mind as to what you observe. Didn't put up much smoke, did it? And it went right out, and I'll tell you, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I'll see it when it goes into the editing program. This whole top was glowing red, like a charcoal would, but it went right out. And as I'm pulling it out like this, it's becoming very, very flaky. So what I'm going to do now is take this over to the other shop, if I don't lose all of this, and see how this catches a spark. It's real light, real dusty. Just the movement of my hand trying to get a spark in it is moving it around. Now, let me try the ferrocerium rod because I can't get enough spark to get into it. Oh yeah, she's going really good. You guys can see that. You can see how it's working. So, the answer is that question for me. You just can't take a yucca, cut it open, and expect that pithy part to catch a spark and burn. You still have to char it for that to happen. Okay, it's been an hour. I rotated that can many, many times, and as you can see, there's not a whole lot of smoke coming out of there. There just isn't. Not compared to some other stuff that I've charred. See, I just flipped it over on its top. It's been about 3 minutes, and you can see there's just not a lot of smoke coming off of this. So I hope I won't know until later, but I hope this is an indication that this is going to be a good charcoal source for black powder. Well, there we have it. Century plant. This is about what I was expecting to see. And now I have a decision to make, and it's actually a pretty simple decision to make. So let me show you what we have. Here's our control, Weeping Willow 0.39. This is 15 grams of Century Plant. This is 13 grams of Century Plant. And of course, this is 75 grams of potassium nitrate. So I'm going to be making this formula with 75 grams of potassium nitrate, and actually it's 76 to compensate for the moisture that's associated with the potassium nitrate. And it's a real simple thing to figure out. Every time I get a brand new bag of potassium nitrate, I pull out 75 grams, weigh it, put it on the dashboard of my truck and the cookie sheet, and I weigh the loss of moisture and just compensate for that. Okay, so the formula is going to actually be 76, 13, 11. Now some of you may be asking, well, why don't you just go 77, 13? Well, let me show you something here real quick. That is 1 gram of potassium nitrate. In my opinion, that 1 gram is not going to do any better in the amount of charcoal that I need to consume. So let's just be honest, okay? That little bit, that 1 more gram to this amount of potassium nitrate is not going to make a hill of beans on this 13 grams of charcoal. It's just not. And I'm guessing that the specific gravity of Century Plant is probably pretty close to balsa wood. Okay, so I'm going to get busy in mixing this, and we'll see what the end results are going to be, and I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Okay, it's been 21 hours. It's 100 grams of this gunpowder that I'm making with Century Plant as the charcoal source, and as I showed previously, volume-wise, it's quite a bit, and that's why I went to 13 grams instead of 15. But it's been 21 hours, and I just kind of want to show everybody, if you can see, it's not fully compacted yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain this through the strainer, and then I'm going to do a test burn to see if we can get an early indication if it burns clean, if it burns fast, if it burns dirty. We'll just observe this together. So stay tuned for a moment or two while I get this screened out and get some of the powder on the block, and it's a clean block, so we can really observe what this is going to do. Let's find out together. Alright, let's get a close-up of the block. Had to move the camera around quite a bit just to get you the best sunlight onto the block. But bear in mind, this is just the powder. It's not pocked, it's not grained or anything. This is just the powder. And I would say that that went up really quick for just being the powder, because I've done these tests before, and they, you could almost see the burn at this point. But anyhow, here's the block, guys. Make up your own mind. But I'm looking at this and determining that's pretty clean. That's real clean. There's the finger. See if I can rub some more. Wow. I'm impressed thus far. But I've had results like this in the past, and shooting it down the gun barrel of my flintlock, things kind of changed. So I'm anxious to get this milled up completely, pocked, sized, and then I'll do another test burn at that point just to see if things have changed. Now remember, friends, this is not a wood. This is a plant, and the core, as I showed previously, is very, very light, and it's very fibrous. So I would expect there to be a different result, a different end result, if you will. So I'm going to go back to pucking it, and we'll just see how it ends up as this video progresses. Alright, we've arrived the portion of the video to do the test burn with Century Plant. I found this a little interesting, just simply because Broken Feather and I, we are tracking the amount of loss that we have when we, make our gunpowders. I've experienced a little bit, he's experienced it, and we're trying to figure out why. But I found this interesting. What's on this plate glass is 30 grains by volume. It is not settled. I took that 30 grain by volume and put it in my scale, and it actually weighed 28.7 grains. I would not have guessed that with the amount of volume of what the Century Cactus was, what I was showing earlier in the video. I would not have expected this. But, we'll find out for sure at the very end when I actually weigh 80 grains and see what that, represents as far as being volume in the powder measure. So let's get this burnt and take a look at what's left behind. So once again, we've got the smoky residue right through here. Okay, you can probably see that there's some filth left behind, some charcoal left behind. But actually, it's not as bad as what that almond was, in my opinion, of course. But what I'm curious about is this right here. If you reflect back to the almond I burnt, appears like there's a whole lot less left behind here. Let me see if I can't get this into the sun and give you a little better look, because I can see a reflection coming off of this glass of the tree behind the camera. Stay tuned. Okay, I don't know, guys, if that's going to help or not. But if you look at that, there's really not a whole lot left behind right in through here. I know it's getting a little dirty, but make up your own mind. I think ultimately shooting this down the gun barrel is going to prove how good or how bad Century Plant gunpowder is. So stay tuned for that. Well, that looks like 1853. Give me a moment. I'll turn the camera around and I'll show you what 80 grains by weight represents in the powder measure. Correction, 1854. I would want to make sure that somebody is more dead with that extra foot per second. I don't know if you can see it all that well. I'll try to maybe get a little closer. You can see that that's just barely above the 80 grain by volume mark. Couldn't find that patch, but I do want to make a statement for those that think you can only have good gunpowder by using a 30-ton bottle jack. I beg to differ, okay? I think a lot of it has to do with your charcoal source. Reflect back to the previous video with almond shell. The first shot was what, about 1750? Only had about that much charcoal source. This is century plant, got that much charcoal source, and I got 100 more feet per second. Yes, it's more gunpowder, but that is what that is. But I want to be able to find the patches to see if this is a cleaner burning gunpowder. And if you haven't noticed, I took the time this morning and I changed my resting point back to a V-notch, and you might see that on the bench just about somewhere in here. Alright, I'm going to get reloaded and keep going. And if I continue to produce these higher numbers outside of that first shot, which is what I typically do, I'm going to do an experiment. But I'm only going to talk about that if I get to that point. So stay tuned. $17.68. Well, I found that patch. That's what it looks like. I'd say it's fairly clean. I would say it's a little bit cleaner than the almond shell, that's for sure. And if you're looking at it, just starting to burn through just a little bit. And I'm going to try to address that a little bit later in another video about why I think some of these patches burn through and others don't. Now this is a 20 thousandths patch, okay? What I shot the other day with the almond shell was also a 20 thousandths patch. And as you can see by the fifth shot, they were just getting disintegrated. But for the most part, and it's still damp, so you're going to have a different color change once this dries out. Alright, I'll get reloaded and get you some more numbers, because I'm curious to see what the rest of the numbers are going to be myself. $1,800 even. Alright, I'm going to mark off the target, see if I can find the patch. Well, here's number 3. I would dare say it's cleaner than number 2. Pun included. It's a little bit more shredded, but it's a lot cleaner looking. Alright. Get reloaded and get you another number. Well, except for shot number 2, it's looking pretty good. I'm sure shot number 2 is just where I was aiming it. Let me get your number off the chronograph. 1834. So far, I'm liking these results. Let me go mark off the target, see if I can't find that patch, and get you one more number. $17.78. I'll mark off the target, see if I can't find that 5th patch. That's the one I really want to look at, and I did use a white patch this time, 20 thousandths. Stay tuned and hopefully I can find it. Couldn't find that patch, but I'm going to go ahead and do my little experiment. Okay. Here's the powder measure for the century plant. And as I said, 80 grains by weight is just a little bit above that 80 grain mark by volume. What I did this morning before coming out here is I took some 3F Swiss, settled it, and I got that amount. Then I weighed it, and it weighed 87.6 grains. So then what I did after that is I took the century cactus and I weighed out 87.6 grains. And that's almost up to the 90 grain mark on this powder measure. So I'm going to take one shot with Swiss 3F at the same volume that I've been shooting the century cactus, and then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to equal the weight and see what those numbers end up producing. Now bear in mind, as I do this, I'm expecting to get more feet per second, yes, from the Swiss, just simply because of the value, the explosive power of the heavy graphite glazing. You know, we talk about this glazing, this graphite glazing, and our gunpowder is weaker. Yes, but I've yet to see anybody try to determine the explosive nature and the peak performance added to your gunpowder. So the best I can do now is just match volume to weight and see what we have. Okay, so the next shot will be 3F Swiss. But before I do that, I want to show everybody what the lock looks like after those 5 shots with Century Plant. It's not near as dirty looking as the 5 shots with the almond shell the other day. It is a little cleaner burning, and I've had 0 issues loading this gun. And that number is 1842. I would have expected it to be higher, but it's not. We'll mark off the target, see if I can find that patch, reload it with the 87.6 grains, and see what that number is going to be. So before I shoot the next shot, that's one shot with Swiss. You see the white smoky residue in the bottom of the pan? You see the white smoky residue top of the barrel? So when you hear people say that Swiss is a little dirtier, I would concur. All right, let's get this downrange and see what kind of number we can produce. What's that, 1866? Looks like it to me. Okay, I found both those patches. The white one with Swiss. That's what it looks like. And then I found the last shot. Now remember, this went down a barrel that was previously shot with Swiss. And I shot approximately, well, no, I know for a fact, 7.6 more grains. And there's that patch. It's not burnt through, so I have no answer as to why some of these patches burn through and others don't. But I would say they're just about as equally dirty or clean, depending on what your perspective is. Now I will tell you, as I shot that last shot, I thought I flinched it a little bit, and the target's going to show that I did. There's the target. Even that shot with Swiss went through the group. This was my last shot right here. And like I said, I thought I flinched when I shot, and that shot right there shows that I did. Shot number 2, I just aimed it in a different spot. But you bring everything together, shrink everything down, and everything is in one little group. So I would say I do better shooting this gun into V-rest than doing what I did the other day. That was obviously a mistake. But anyhow, there's the target. Let me run through the numbers real quick and give you those. Okay, the 7-shot average, which included that one shot with Swiss, the average was 1820, spread of 98, and a deviation of 35. And I really don't think the deviation shooting a muzzleloader really matters. I just don't. But the reason why the spread is a little high, because the high and the low included the shots with the Century plant. Okay, but if you throw out, or if I throw out the shot with the Swiss, the 1842, the 6-shot average was 1860 with a spread of 95 and a deviation of 37. So those numbers tell me it's a fairly decent black powder, gunpowder. You know, and the low being 1768, that was that second shot. And it could have just been picking up the patch, because we've determined from time to time when you're doing this and you're getting, you know, a number that just, well, doesn't make any sense. Well, that could be the chronograph picking up the patch. So anyhow, I found it interesting that when I matched the weight to grain of the Swiss versus the Century plant did better. And that's, you know, one of my talking points, and for the time being, I'm going to hang my hat on this talking point. If you're going to make homemade black powder and you're going to try to compare it to a factory gunpowder such as Swiss, you need to bear in mind that when you have an 80 grain by volume, weigh that. And as I showed, when I did that, that weight of Swiss was actually 87.6 grains. And when I matched that weight in another powder measure, I outshot Swiss. And this isn't the first time that I've actually done this. Okay, I've done this several times on this channel. And consistently, I've either been right in line with Swiss, or I've actually shot better than Swiss. And granted, I'm using more gunpowder to achieve that end, but hey, what are we making this gunpowder for? A couple bucks a pound? So really, what does the extra gunpowder really relate to? That's the way I look at things. And you also have to bear in mind something else too, and I forgot to put this in the previous video, shooting the almond shell. When I went down to Lelou's and shot with William, his formula was 7713 10.4. When I milled my almond shell, I was using 75 15 11. Now just let me clarify, when I say 75, I actually mean 76. Just simply because when I get a new batch of KN03, I pull out 75 grams and I weigh what that moisture loss is, and then I compensate for that. And usually it's running right at about a gram. Sometimes it's like 0.8, 0.9. It's like right in that spectrum. So I just rounded up to 76. So in reality, this particular load with the Century plant, and remember I showed earlier in this video how much volume was compared to 15 grams as opposed to 13 grams. Okay, so this formula right now is 76, compensating for the moisture in the KN03. It's 76, 13, 11. And I'm pretty impressed with it. So anyhow, I want to thank everybody for watching this. And I am impressed with these numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another batch of the Century plant gunpowder. I'm going to keep it right at 200 grams because I'm impressed with it. But this time I'm going to mill it with brass media. And when that's all done and said, we'll come out here and do some more shooting and just determine if there's really any difference, not only in cleaner patches, but also in velocities. So thanks for watching this. And if you glean something from it, I hope you give it a thumbs up and share it with your bestest of buds. And we'll see you as soon as that 200 gram batch of Century plant is finished.